Hey everybody, it's Dr. Steven. This week's expectations, I want to just share just a little bit from my heart. So you probably read my bio and I've talked a little bit on the emails, but almost all of my teaching experience until last fall was in face-to-face classes. And I have to admit, those are clearly my favorite. But, life goes on and progress continues. And so here we are in online classes, and that's okay. I'm learning the basics and we're getting through it. But one of the things that I believe we miss in some of the online classes is the personal interaction, which is why I'm just so enjoying already the dialogue and the discussion and the back and forth from our discussion questions. Now, I told you already that the syllabus that was put in the portal really wasn't my syllabus. It was actually from a former professor, and it was a placeholder until I could get mine up. And then that whole ordeal happened with my family, and I was out of town for a week and a half and didn't get it in. So we've had some confusion with that. But I want to introduce a completely new idea to you guys, and I hope you're okay with this. It's something that I've done for years and years, and I want to teach you. Back when I was finishing up my seminary degree, my Master's of Divinity from Fuller Theological Seminary, I had a professor who took a little bit of time and taught us about academic skimming. Now, I have already uploaded just a very simple 3-slide PowerPoint that talks about it that you can reference. But I want to talk a minute about academic skimming because it's what we do at the graduate and postgraduate level. Quite frankly, nobody reads every word on every page of every book. We just don't. And that's not being dishonest. It's not a lack of integrity. It's simply what we do in higher and advanced education. And so I want to teach you real quickly the steps to do it. And then what I want to suggest is that over the next several weeks, I want you to do that with each of the texts that you've been assigned. And so the reading assignment is going to be employing this method. So there's basically 6 steps to it. And just hear me out on this. You need to do every one of them completely. And the first couple are going to seem a little silly, but I'm telling you, not only did it get me through the rest of my master's degree program, it's the only way I was able to make it through my doctoral program. Because instead of 3, 4, or 5 books per class, which I had in my graduate seminary classes, when I got to my doctoral program, I would have 15 to 20 books for a module. And I had 8 modules, and then beyond that, of course, I had my dissertation. So trust me on this, it works. And if you guys can start employing this, I think it'll just revolutionize your higher education, and it'll help you a lot. So first thing you want to do on academic skimming is you want to read and examine the front and back cover. Now, here's this big one from Haddon Robinson and Craig Larson, one of our texts. It's got a dust cover on it, so you're going to read the front. You're going to look at all the little things they put. On the back, you've got contributors. On the inside dust cover, you've got a brief summary of what the book is about. You've got some bullet points. On the back side, you've got a little bit about the authors. This book here, this is one from a class. It's a book by Andy Stanley. There's some endorsements on the back cover. There's some real simple points on the inside covers, front and back. So you want to completely examine the front and back. Now, this book doesn't have a dust cover, but it does have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different endorsements on the back. Well, why is that important? Well, an endorsement or a summary is something that's been written by somebody who's already read the book. So you're already getting a key to the important kind of takeaways from the book. So that's number 1, is read and examine the front and back cover, the dust cover, everything before you actually open the book. Number 2, read all the introductions, all the forewords, and all the prefaces. Now, I always tended to just ignore all those and go right to chapter 1 because you've got forewords, you've got prefaces, you've got introductions. But again, the point about that is these typically are written by guests who have been invited to write something after they read the entire book. And these guests usually are people that are well regarded in their field. So I look at the foreword, I look at the endorsements, I read the introductions, the endorsements, the forewords, the preface, and maybe there's at the end there's some kind of an epilogue or something like that. When I look through all of those and I read them, it doesn't take very long. They're usually 1, 2, 3 pages long. I already begin to have an understanding of why the author wrote the book and the key points in the book. Number 3, examine, even study the table of contents. Now, the reason you do that is the table of contents is going to tell you, quite frankly, what the author is up to, kind of his or her logic behind the way they're writing the book. And it helps you also begin to be able to predict and understand what the next thing is going to be. If it's maybe it's 3 sections, and under each section there are 5 chapters, or maybe it's just each is a standalone chapter. There's a lot of ways of writing books, but if you study the table of contents, you begin to have an understanding about how the author is developing his or her thought, and you can predict what's next. So, study and examine the table of contents. Then, number 4, and this is absolutely critical, read all of chapters 1 and 2. Every word, chapters 1 and 2. Read the whole thing. If a writer is good, then they will tell you in chapter 1 and then even in chapter 2, they'll tell you what they're going to say. And they're going to tell you why they're going to say it. Chapter 1 usually kind of tells you that, and then chapter 2 begins what they're trying to say. And then you begin to see the way they're going to develop their ideas. So that's number 4. Read chapters 1 and 2 completely. Number 5, read the first page, and I would go so far as to say maybe the first 1.5 to 2 pages, depending on where a paragraph break is. Read the first page of every subsequent chapter. So chapter 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and so forth. Read the first page, the first 2 pages of each chapter. Now, the reason you're doing this is because now that you understand what the book's about, you know how they've laid it out, you know their logic behind it. You've already read chapter 1 where they've summarized it, chapter 2 where they've started the way that they're going to write the book. You can, by reading the first 1 or 2 pages of every subsequent chapter, you can already grab what they're trying to say in that chapter. And then finally, the 6th point, and this is just as important as all the others, read the last chapter completely. Because if you read the last chapter, you're reading their final thoughts. You're reading their summary. Now, if you do this the way I just taught you, you will read about 25, maybe 30% of the book. But let me ask you this. What's better, doing it the way I just taught you, or just jumping in on chapter 1 and reading the first third of the book and then getting bogged down and never really finishing the book? If you read it the way I've just taught you, you will grasp the majority of the book and the ideas behind the book. Enough to write a reflection paper on it, enough to be tested on it, enough to remember the basic key ideas in the book. I have read scores and scores and scores of books. I don't even know how many, maybe 150 books this way. Now, this doesn't work for devotional reading of the scriptures. This doesn't work for fiction, obviously. This doesn't work for a book that you've got near your nightstand that you really want to work your way through. I'm not saying don't read all of the book, but I'm saying in graduate study, this is the way we do it. So the assignment over the next several weeks is I want you each week to take one of your textbooks and employ this method for it. Beyond that, we're going to have some other assignments that I'm going to be putting on the syllabus or the lessons for each week. We're going to be having some sermons we're going to have to look and review. We're going to have some sermons we're going to write. There's some videos you're going to watch. This week you're going to watch the first of 3 video interviews with a couple of great pastors from New Life Church. And we're going to have some discussion questions. So that's the bulk of the work. But I wanted to take a few minutes and talk about how to skim. And I hope you guys will join me in this challenge, and let's try this and let me know how it works for you and what you think about it. God bless you guys.